Well, no, now Rosa cannot put the slides. Anyone else would like to? All right. Yep, there it is. Hello, hello. I'm right here.
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. So building harmonious relationships, huh? They can be a source of great joy, but also a source of tremendous suffering. Aren't you agree with it? Don't you agree with this? It can be happiness, absolute happiness. It can be also tremendous pain. So next slide, please. So USC study. Can you switch to the next slide, please, Maria? Maria.
You see it? I'm moving. I don't know why if we lost her.
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Next slide, Maria.
I did.
Nope.
Okay, hang on. Hang on. I'm sorry. I see the next slide. All right, hang on.
You see black.
What do you see?
The next slide.
Can you do the previous one? This is
okay.
That one, not yet.
Do you see this one?
That one. Okay.
Oh, that one.
Okay.
Yes.
So we talk about bad relationships, and this is a study in USC, California. It says bad relationships can affect a person emotionally, physically, mentally, and even lower their self-esteem. And I guess we all have seen that either in our life or in someone else's life. So when we consider the negative impact that difficult relationships can have in our well-being, it seems to be easy to, the easiest thing is just to either avoid them or, walk away from them, from whatever or whoever caused us pain or discomfort. Can we see the next one, please? But the truth is that, and all of us have probably considered, these questions like, should I find a different job instead of dealing with this person who's causing me problems? Maybe would it be healthier for me to end my relationship with this toxic friend? Maybe it is time to take a break from my family or even change partners. We live in a society, and this is just truth. We live in a society in which the norm is for people to cut ties with others. And however, not yet, but okay. So, however, apart from the scenarios in which our security could be a concern, I mean, whenever we feel we might be at risk, walking away from a difficult relationship only perpetuates loneliness and prevent us from developing our humanity. And next, please. So, how can we transform difficult relationships? That's the question. Let's work on it. Let's look at the Buddhist perspective of how can we transform difficult relationships. Next, please. If we seek happiness externally, in other words, waiting for someone else to change, we will always be at the mercy of our environment. This can seem a bitter pill to swallow, to think about this, but especially when we feel that we are right and the person who is wrong is the other person, I'm right. So if we seek happiness externally, it essentially amounts to not taking responsibility for our own life. And these are difficult concepts to deal with because they're so different to what we are used to hear out there. Oh, walk away from negative. Oh, ignore people who this and that. So in Buddhism, and this caught my attention the first time I read it, in Buddhism, it tells you, pay attention to this thing that is causing you discomfort. Why? Pay attention. Why are you reacting this way? But we will continue. I will continue. You will be discovering a few other concepts here. So, so we essentially amounts to avoiding responsibility in our own life. Could you switch to the next one, please? So, if we seek happiness externally, It essentially amounts to not taking responsibility. So where does the driving force for change lies? So what is it? Where is it? Where is the life force to drive up the change? Establishing a life condition in which you don't get, please, the next one, you don't get carried away one way or another is essential. This means building a self that is solid and determined. But if we neglect this task and focus our energy somewhere else, for example, in that other person, what other persons do or don't do, or what they do wrong or whatever, before we know it, we end up in the path of suffering, right? So a change in the attitude we have toward relationships is required because, can I have the next one, please? If we always blame others, other people, or our environment for our circumstances, we are avoiding the challenge of addressing our inner negativity. By changing ourselves on a deeper level, we can begin to improve our situation. So, Buddhism is inviting us to use these difficult situations as trampoline for change in our life and bettering our life. But let's explore the story of a woman. It's a real story, real life story. Her name was Chieko Yamashita. Can we see the picture of this lady? It's a Japanese lady. And after Chieko's husband's business failed, her husband started, drinking excessively and gambling, and because of that, he caused a lot of pain to his wife and also to his children. Next one, please. Actually, the family fall into poverty and they lost their house. And actually, even the husband abused her physically. And we see the next one, please. In one occasion, the husband actually gambled away $35,000 that she had saved diligently to buy a new house. Can we see the next picture, please? And that's the two children, and that's the two of them together. But I can imagine almost what you are thinking now. So let's do a quick survey. How would you advise Chieko? What would you advise her to do? What would you tell her to do? Who can tell me? Maybe Maria can tell me. Maria, what do you think she should do? Chieko.
Maria Cardes.
Oh, that's
Yes.
what I'm saying. Which Maria she's talking to?
Well,
Wow.
Charlie says take her children and run away, I think. She's saying that.
Yeah, take them and go.
Well, depending if the relationship is abusive, I would definitely leave him and take the children, for safety.
There you go. Yep, that's reasonable. Let's see what happened. Let's see what Chieko decided. So Chieko actually decided to implement some of the basic principles to deal with this problem. And let's hold down the slides, please. If like a few more things before we get to this one. Before we find out what happened to her, let's discuss some of these principles. So Buddhist philosophy teaches us how to develop the ability to harmonize with those around us and bring people together and develop compassion, love, empathy, and solidarity. And that will be the next slide, actually. Could you switch it, please? Okay, so that's what Buddhism teaches us. It also teaches us that, the next one, please, the pathology of division leads people to an irrational attachment to differences. I would like ladies to please pay attention to this. Irrational attachment to differences and an absolute blindness to human similarities. Another Buddhist concept is that there's the unity between life and the environment. And that's the next one, please. Simply put, our life do not exist or thrive in isolation. And I guess we all know this in one way or another. Our life don't thrive in isolation. Rather, because we are part of a larger symbiotic fabric of coexistence, whatever we think, whatever we say, whatever we do impacts our families, communities, workplaces, nations, and ultimately all humanity. This means that, next one please, through the transformation of our hearts and minds, we can change our environment for the better and move our life and society in the direction of harmony and peace. Next one, please. The inner transformation at the deepest level represents the true benefit of understanding and practicing these ideas. This is quite complicated to understand, and we will have a little bit of the opportunity to dialogue if you want. So after finish, I'm almost done. So through our understanding and diligent practice of these concepts, in a very natural way, we draw forward within, we draw from within ourselves a higher life condition, a state of life. Could we see the next one, please? And that higher life condition is characterized by a heart or spirit that is firm, always victorious, pioneering, progressive, resistant, determined, brave, compassionate, tolerant, encouraging, grateful, and invincible. That sounds great. Changing our heart is not a matter of doing something that will temporarily lift our spirit. It makes and make us feel better for a short period of time without actually changing the depth of our reality. A true change in our heart is deeper. Genuine inner change produces real change in our life. Okay, let's move up to the story of Checo. Let's see what happened to her. That's Checo. There we see her. She actually decided to take responsibility for her own happiness. Let's see what that means. Take responsibility for your own happiness. She recalled a story, not yet. Let's hold on to Checo for a second. Yeah, thank you. She recalled a story told to her about a woman who asked a Buddhist scholar whether he thought she should divorce her husband or not. The Buddhist scholar responded, and next please, it is not up to me to tell you what to do with your marriage. I cannot tell you to divorce or stay with your spouse. The only thing that I can tell you is that if you do not transform your karma that had led you to having this kind of conflictive relationships, even if you separate, you will go through similar suffering again in the future. Since you are going to be exposed to the same afflictions anyway, why not seek to transform things in your current relationship? Checo later said to that, and regarding her issues, could you move to the next one, please? She said, I made my decision not to give up on my relationship. I decided to stop oscillating between joy and sadness due to the chaos of my life and to stop complaining about what my husband was and was not doing. It was not about anyone else. Everything depended in my own life condition. Well, I know, probably some of you might be wondering if this means that we should stay in a toxic relationship in order to change our karma. Well, it's very important to understand that in Buddhism doesn't see situation in a superficial way or in a black and white way. Next one, please. The important thing is to bring forth the wisdom to know what actions to take in each circumstance. And for each person, that action will be different. What matters is how we grow and develop as a result of our challenges. And this is the key part of information in Buddhism. What matters is how we grow and develop as a result of our challenges. Changing our heart means developing a deep belief in each person's potential, that we are able to do so. It's not only an expression of our belief in our own, it's an expression of belief in our own potential, but also an expression of the trust and respect for all human beings. Okay, so next one. Only by resolving to transform our relationships, we can reveal our inherent nobility and become models to unite people, which is what the world needs. Let's go back to Checo to finish the story. And we'll see the next slide, please. With the determination that I mentioned earlier, Checo put herself, her whole heart into overcoming the situation and instead of focusing on what her husband was doing wrong and all his faults. So she began to appreciate him for helping her, deepening her belief on herself and her potential. As a result, on her new perspective on life and her marriage, next one please, her husband actually got over his addiction of gambling and new and unexpected work opportunities appeared for her. Chekhov said, through all the negative and positive experiences, my husband taught me about believing in myself. Now, I have become a person who can feel incredible appreciation knowing that I owe everything to the terrible hardships I experienced. I found that quite profound and perplexing too. Over the years, Checo, and we can see another picture of her, she moved her way up in real estate business to become the president of a company that operated 36,000 square feet food property. She made so much money, enough money to build a community center actually to help and serve people in need. And guess what? She called that community center Yamashita, which is her last name. Was her last name. So she's just a great example of how to develop unwavering determination and genuine appreciation even for our greatest challenges. She is also an example of how to help transform our life into a life of great value, joy, and happiness. Yamashita, Mrs. Yamashita, story is more common than what we think actually. She understandably initially blamed her husband for all her misery and all her unhappiness. As a result, and this is another key part of this story, as a result of blaming him, she continued to suffer, feeling powerless and unable to challenge the situation. But the moment her resolve changed, something changed in her heart and her environment immediately reflected. That's the kind of determination we can develop when we put these principles based in Buddhist philosophy into action. Once we understand that everything that happened to us enables us to develop our life and grow, our problems will not seem as daunting. Could we see the next one, please? That's her and her oldest. And then the next one, please. Okay. And I think we have a question here. So, the more we tend to complain and blame others, the more we delay our own personal growth. I would like you to please remember that. The more we tend to complain and blame others, the more we delay our own personal growth. And can we see the next slide, please? Mhm. That's what I just said. The kind of determination. And to close, I would like to open a little bit of a dialogue with a question. Can we see the next, please? The next question is, what have you done to deal with difficult relationships, and how well or not well did it work? And with that, I finish my presentation. If anyone have any comment or anything would like to add, more than welcome. Thank you.
Very good presentation.
Yeah, that was very interesting. I do have something to say, and that's
Go ahead, Christy.
Maria. Oh, okay. I think there is truth. I mean, I've experienced working in a toxic office, and I was there for 3 years. And then the last year, I decided to change the way I thought about my boss and my coworkers, because there was constant gossiping and just constant negative talk, and people just belittling each other. The way I decided to kind of like just, I guess I kind of did an avoidance type thing, where I would just focus on positive things and engage in conversations about things that were positive instead of engaging in gossip all the time. And so what that allowed me to do was to focus more on work and not go home and cry. Because the workspace was very toxic. It was an everyday thing where people were just constantly gossiping and talking bad about one another, and it was just really bad. So I do believe that there is truth to what Nydia was presenting here today.
You know, who benefit more, Christy? Just simple question. Who benefit more?
I definitely benefited from just changing the way I thought and not engaging in those type of, conversations, because I went home a lot happier. I didn't take work home with me. I didn't take those thoughts home with me, where in the past I would take all of that with me. It was stuck in my chest all the time. I would get headaches all the time. But I was just a more content person working there. I felt more productive and I got more work done at that point, when I decided to change the way I reacted, or just, my perception of what they believe. And
That's very important, actually. And by the way, thank you, Maria, for rolling the PowerPoint. Thank you so
No
much.
problems, no problems. But I think that that Christy's right. It's, I don't know if it's Buddhism or if it's just the survival or whatever, but when you're in a toxic environment, if you, or even let's say if you have a family member that always makes you depressed or whatever, I think you have to decide what you're going to do, and what works for you. So if it's like, okay, so I'm only going to see her like at family gatherings, I'm not going to really seek her out and stuff, and I'm just going to limit myself. I'm not going to take what she says a pecho, because you always have like, you always have like an aunt or something who says, ay, nena, todavía jamona, ay, nena, todavía gordita, ay, nena, te estás poniendo vieja y estás sola, ay, nena. What are you going to do? I mean, that can depress you, pero nothing, this is how they greet you. You say hello, bendición, you keep going. If you don't, what I found is that, my philosophy is that if the other person has a problem and the other person is such a negative person, I'm not going to take that on to myself. Okay. So what you say and whatever, you know what? It's going to go in one ear and out the other, because I cannot have your negativity on top of me, because I'm the one who goes home depressed. I'm the one who goes home, you know, crying with a heavy chest. And meanwhile, you're having the time of your life. So why do I have to carry your burden? You know, if you did something wrong, if you said something wrong, well, you know what? You're the one who, that's your conscience. You know, I'm not going to, I have enough worrying about me, you know, so I better myself. You know, I work on myself, and, you know, I try to help other people, but if it doesn't work, I'm not going to force you, you know, and nothing. Hello and goodbye. Y ¿cómo se dice? You know, la tratan de lejos. You know that saying? You just give yourself distance, but you work on
Yes,
yourself and you change your mentality.
Yes. And one of the things that attracted me from Buddhism was precisely that idea that I didn't have to be at the mercy of whatever person's mood around me was. Because I tend to be, okay, if this person asks questions like you just described, that ant, that would kill me and I will suffer. And I will spend a whole week recovering from the interaction with that person. And I didn't want that in my life anymore. And I guess there were so many of people like that around me that I decided that instead of running away from each of them, I wanted to become stronger myself. So you can say and throw at me and vomit whatever you want to do. It's not. I decide that that's not going to hurt me. And that at first sounded impossible because I grew up in a house where grandma would blame everything of the neighbors, your friends, because they make you do this, because it was never our fault. It was always someone else. The children, the next door, that it was someone else, always. So we never took responsibility for anything. It was normal to blame others. And that's the worst we can do. The moment I place this responsibility in someone else, in that moment I'm declaring myself incapable of changing the situation. In that moment I'm giving up any possibility of, handling in my own. And that moment I become just a victim. And that's a terrible way of living. I decided that was not the way I wanted to live. So you might ask questions that I don't appreciate, but I understand and I look at you with compassion. I make an effort to develop my compassion, to say, well, you're asking this out of a terrible life condition, and you must be suffering too. That's why you're asking those questions in such a cruel way. And I don't take it personally. And that's, to be able to do that, it takes a lot of courage too. It's not easy.
Nydia, going back to the story of
Checo.
Checo, she decided to stay with the relationship, right? Because she decided to change her own behavior of how she reacted to her husband. If I'm trying to understand how this worked, how she accepted this and how it changed, right? So she did the change in herself, not trying to make him change, right?
Exactly.
So he saw the change in her, right? And that turned him around. Is that because I didn't catch the voice with a little mumble when you was explaining? He then transformed, correct?
That's correct. You got it.
Because what was his? Because I didn't understand too much. What was his impediment? What was his issue that was causing the toxic relationship?
Well, actually, everything was going very well. They have 2 children at that point, and bad movement in his business actually crashed the business, and he lost everything, even the house.
Oh, okay.
So he became so desperate that he started gambling to see if that way he could get some more money, and actually lost even more money. And then he started drinking, and he started drinking.
Exactly, like men usually do. They say, oh, they lose everything and they get desperate and they try all these desperate tactics to try to, and you know, it doesn't work. So that, okay, so now I understand. So instead of her leaving him because, you know, she decided to stay and just understand and transform the way she was accepting this, instead of the fighting and the arguing and whatever toxic thing that she would have reacted, she didn't react. She said, okay, this is what it is. Let's work on that. And she changed and transformed her own behavior to understand this without letting it affect her toxically. So I guess at the same time, he changed the role. Okay, she's not leaving me. She's there for me, whatever. Okay, so now I understand how that could work, because it's true. Because I've had a toxic relationship with my own son because of his illness. And it's true, when it doesn't work with the fighting and the arguing, it doesn't. It just gets worse. And until you step back, you say, okay, that's him. You have to just calm down and just don't let it affect you, because it was physically affecting me. Physically, mentally, it was horrible. And I had to step back. Just like Maria was saying, yeah, you have to step back. You said, you know, I'm not gonna allow this to ruin me, because this is his life. And he knows what he needs to do. And if he's not doing it, then why should it affect me? You know, why should it destroy me? So in that transformation, and you know, it's true that it does work that way. It could be Buddhism, like you said, but it works for me in the sense I said, listen, that's you. This is my options. You either take it or you leave it. You know, I'm here. I'm your mother. I'm never gonna leave you. I'm never gonna, but you're not gonna take me down with you. That this is where we stop. And he
Welcome.
changed. And
Congratulations.
He said, oh wow, I'm gonna lose my mom. You know, I can't lose my mom. And he made the transfer. He said, okay, Mom, I'm ready. I'm ready to do what I need to do. And it's amazing. I said, damn, I should have done that years ago. You're pampering and you're, you know. And I said, I should have done that years ago. So, I mean, it's so heavy that, you know, this Buddhism thing does, you know, it sounds very like in the wording, like you said, that sometimes they need explanation because it's so heavy that some people might not be able to understand it. But it's like you said, Buddhism is a thing you have to read once or twice. I mean, I've had to read it 3-4 times. I said, oh, this is heavy. Let me read it again. You know, to really like get in, because it's very heavy stuff. And last, I would like to know where, you know, what, you know, how did you get into it? What books have you read? You know, because the ones I have are so old, I would probably like to get some new stuff. You know, I would love to see what you've been reading and what you've read.
If I can make a comment before you answer that, Nydia. This is Charlie. I got my camera off because I'm in the middle of cooking. Pero I think that, you know, everyone has their own ability to decide for themselves, or they should decide for themselves. A lot of times, you know, our culture tells us, no, we can't leave somebody that's bad, or we have to be there, or we have to, you know, understand that they have demons, y esto y lo otro. Pero there comes a point where you need to love from afar. You know, you need to turn around and say, you know what, I love you and I want to be there for you, but you're trying to destroy yourself and you're destroying me along with it, because you're using me as your punching bag, whether it's physically, emotionally, mentally, lo que sea. And understanding that at that point, it's not about standing by the person and making excuses or trying to be there for them. It is letting them fall and letting them get up on their own, because that's the only way that they're gonna grow. And so, you know, it does come to the point where you really need to think of the bigger picture. You know, loving someone and being there for them when they're struggling and they're trying to find themselves and they're so lost is one thing, but making yourself a crutch for them is something totally different. And so, you know, you do need to limit, in my opinion, you do need to limit your accessibility to those people to you know, where you go, hey, I love you, but I can't be around you. Or if you want to be around them, then, you know, hey, we meet 5 minutes and I'm out of here because I have other things that I need to run to, you know. I think that it's important to always take care of yourself and be able to look at what your needs are. Because if you don't put that oxygen mask on, you're gonna expire before you can help them. And I think that's the piece that as women and as Latinas, we tend to forget, because, you know, especially as women, it's like we're supposed to be able to fix things. We're the fixers. You know, if I just love you a little bit more, if I give you a little bit more, if I let you throw your tantrum and give you what you want, you know, and that'll solve the problem, but it really doesn't. It just makes the problem worse.
Exactly.
And so, you know, sometimes we do need to step away and say, you know, what's best for you and for me is to leave. And even if it's just what's best for me is to leave, then that's what you need to do at that point. Doesn't mean that you won't ever come back together. It just means that right now that person needs to grow, and they need to grow on their own. So that's
I hear you, and that's why there's no one single answer for everyone. It's nothing. Each individual will have a completely different response and a completely different decision to make. And this philosophy doesn't tell you what to do. It tells you that the only way is to become stronger, to use this as a way to become a stronger, a better person, to use that opportunity to do that. When we run away from it, we are actually also running away from that opportunity. And what happens when you actually face that challenge and decide to change the attitude and decide to change the way you're looking at things? All that we're manifesting, by the way, is a scientific principle, which has been already proven in laboratories around the planet, which is quite simple and at the same very profound. When you change the way you are looking at something, that you are looking at changes. And this perplexes scientists around the world, but they now know it's true. So it is true at the particular, like little molecules level, but it's also true in our daily life. The moment we change the way we're looking at a situation, that moment, everything shifts. And if what it requires for me to become a stronger person is to be involved with a relationship with someone who tend to be abusive, all I need to understand is something quite simple. I attracted that to my life. I take responsibility for accepting that person in my life. And because I welcome this person in my life and I invited this person in my life, I'm taking this abuse now. I have two options: run away from this abuse. But as this Buddhist scholar said to the woman who was asking if she should divorce or not, most likely we will attract the same thing again. Because that relationship is right there in my life to help me change something in a fundamental level. I might run away again and again and again and again and again and again and spend my life running away from it. But if I decide to face that situation, if I decide to use it as an opportunity for me to change what I need to change, if I decide to use that as an instrument, as a tool for my life, I might benefit way more than just running away. So again, it's no one answer. That I know. And Maria, you asked me, Maria Caldes, you asked me how I got into Buddhism. But if you want, we can maybe have a conversation, and because it's a little bit of a long story, and I think others heard it already. So, well, more than happy to share with you.
And if I can add something to what you said, Nydia.
Sure.
I would say, I would change your wording just a little bit. in the fact that it's not about running away. It's more about making a decision that that's not what you want. That's not the life that you want to share with that person or the life that you want to live. So it's not so much about, running away. It's making a decision, a healthy decision, that this isn't the right relationship for you. And if you find that you end up having those relationships often, then deciding for yourself, then, how am I bringing this type of a relationship to me? What do I need to change for myself to make it better for myself? And I think that's the underlying piece to remember, okay? Because running away is like, oh, well, I'm giving up and I don't know what else to do and I'm scared, but making the decision to leave is so much more empowering. It's so much more a real decision.
I understand what you're saying, but it's like if you don't have a mirror in front of you, it's very hard to put your makeup on. So when you have a relationship and that relationship is not what you want, it's giving you hard time, or let's say abuse is a quite common thing. I particularly have experienced that. So when you are not in front of the mirror, it's very hard to see. When you are involved in a relationship of abuse and you change and you see how that abuse starts to change and you see that person is starting to react to your change and everything starts to change along, and then you realize you are growing, you're overcoming a tendency, you're leaving behind something that's causing you pain and moving forward to a better life. But if you cut it, if you cut that opportunity, if you cut that option, how do you know that you don't like how do you know? How do you know?
But that is the part of then saying, well, if I stand here and stay abused, then how do I know it won't get better? It's like, well, that's not quite the right way to think of it. It's kind of like, okay, if I stand here and the truck is coming my way, I just won't move because I don't know if it'll.
That's not what I said.
No,
I'm sorry if you got that impression. Okay, let me paraphrase. And thank you for saying that you perceive it that way, because that's not what I said. So what happened is I can spend 50 years of my life, as my grandma did, taking abuse, or I can decide to change the way I'm dealing with this and see what happens. I don't want the abuse. As a matter of fact, I didn't want the abuse. So I changed. But the amazing thing that happened when I changed is the other person changed too. We both change. We both grow. We both develop. And that would have not happened if I had stayed just taking the abuse. I changed. I decided to stop it. I decided. And it was not easy. And it was painful. And it was after running away from many previous relationships. Many. And I don't say that with proud.
I think it's very difficult in this example because we tend to see that the person is being harmed, right? The person's gambling, the person's drinking. But the bottom line to this, and it's very difficult to do, but the bottom line is that what they tell you in 12-step programs, right? Something like Al-Anon, is that if you learn to love with detachment and you're not so embroiled in what this person is doing and how it's affecting you, but if you continue to love them, because whatever their issue is, but you step back and you start focusing on yourself and you don't count on them for happiness, but you do the things that make you happy and whatever you need to change in yourself, then it's a whole different focus. The lens is on you and not on them. But in most relationships, it's very difficult because people get very intertwined. And especially when these issues are involved, it's hard not to like want to fix them and want to, say, oh, woe is me, my husband is doing this, my husband is doing that. But when you take a step back and you say, okay, that's happening, I can't change that person, but it doesn't mean I can do things to make me happy, and I can live a life parallel to them, but not immersed in what they're doing that's affecting me. And it's very difficult to do. But
Indeed.
everything does change with how you perceive and how you react. So if you're going to constantly fight with your partner because your partner's drinking, or your partner's gambling, or whatever your partner's doing, if you're constantly in there trying to fix, trying to stop, it's not going to change, because you can't change anybody else, but you can change yourself. So if you step back and you say, okay, well, you're doing what you're doing, I'm not happy about it, but I'm not going to let it ruin my day. I'm not going to stop meeting my friends. I'm not going to stop enjoying the things I do. And not always, but sometimes it does make the other person think and go, this person's no longer fighting with me. This person, is it that they don't care anymore? And all you're doing is detaching.
Yep, that's right. This philosophy was created with just one simple purpose: help people to be happy. That's it. That's the only reason why this philosophy happened. It was created not for controlling, it's just to understand that if each individual become a happier, healthier person, and I mean healthier in more than one way, the world will become a better place, one person at a time, healing wounds and overcoming obstacles and overcoming, things in their life. And that's the only reason. It's no other reason. And as I said before, it's free. And it's not that I'm gaining points to go to heaven for sharing this with you, ladies, because in Buddhism, there is no heaven, neither hell. All I know is that if you at least got one single sentence that is to serve you in any way in your life, I'm happy. And I hope it's the greatest benefit for whatever you want to use it. That's it. We move on. All I know is that when we blame others, we kill every opportunity to develop ourselves. When we place the responsibility in the other person and we don't take responsibility for in our own life and recognize our responsibility in the situation, there is no chance to move forward. We get stuck. And that's suffering. That's pure suffering. Nothing else but suffering. And that's what we don't want. Who wants it?
And when you get stuck, you keep attracting the same stuff.
Exactly.
It becomes a pattern, because that's the whole thing about life. That when you don't change, like you say, you don't change within yourself. To it's a pattern that you don't just continuously happen over and over, and then you wonder why. It's because you haven't changed the pattern. So it's really, like you say, it's really is all on you.
Mhm.
It's not on the other person. It's all on you. And that's a lesson that you did bring today, which is great, because it is all on you.
I found that very empowering. Like, really? I don't have to depend on others. I don't have to wait for others. I can do it myself. It's me. Exactly like you said, Maria.
Yeah,
It's me.
very empowering. It's all
Oh, that's wonderful. I can do it. I want to.
But you know what? I think somewhere along the line, from when we were little girls to when we become young women, somewhere along the line, we become submissive, it's like first they tell you, oh, you can be anything you want and you can reach the stars and, you know, you can study anything and do anything and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, you know, don't talk back. Don't, you know, be nice, be proper. Don't make waves. You know, you know, so we become submissive and we don't, you know, it's sort of like you're at a job interview and the guy will, you know, the guy will say, oh, I can do this job. He may not have any experience, but he's like, I can do that job. Sure, give me the job. I can do it. You know, whereas a woman would say, I am not qualified. I don't know how to do it, you know, so don't give me that job. You know, somewhere along the line, we teach our boys to go for it, you know, to leap. Whereas we tell the girls, you know, like when you get to the edge, look down. And if it's too far, then stay put, you know? So I think somewhere along the, and it's not until we learn to take control again to say, you know what, I'm going to leap, you know, whatever happens, happens. I'm going to take action, you know, because if I don't change it, nobody's going to, it's sort of like cleaning your house. If you don't wash the dishes, the dishes are not going to get done because nobody's coming to your house to wash the dishes, you know? So if you don't wash the dishes, the dishes are just staying there.
See, that's interesting because see, I was brought up totally opposite. I was never submissive because my mother was not submissive. My mother ruled my house, our house. My father, you know, came home every Friday and gave her all the money and stayed with a few pockets so he could go drinking. So I said, whoa, she rules. So I grew up with the woman power. You know, she taught me, you don't submit to no man. And that was always, then that could also be a problem with your relationships because I was so tough and so that guy said, damn, you know, I didn't want to deal with me. He said, damn, you know, you want to be a man? You know, I said, oh, no, I'm a lady. I said, no, you acting like a man. I said, oh, I am? I said, okay. So, you know, I was never submissive. And I always had problems with that, where I didn't take shit from no man. I say, hey, I wash dishes, you wash dishes too. I got to clean the bathroom. No, you go clean the bathroom. What the heck? You know, I work, you work, hey, you know. So but that was my downfall in a way of dealing with men that I didn't take nothing. I was never submissive. I was totally the opposite.
But here's where I throw another word at you. Instead of learn to be submissive, which I can see where that's coming from, but I think it's more of we learn to stifle ourselves in order to be loved. Nobody's going to like you if you do that. Nobody's going to like you. You know, you have to be a good girl to do this. You have to, I don't like you because you're not cleaning your room. I don't like you because you're not doing the dish. I don't like you, so it becomes a part of being programmed, being domesticated, as Don Luis says, that you're domesticated. You're taught how to be a certain way. You're taught that, if you sit there and be a proper girl, then people will like you. You have to sit a certain way. You have to walk a certain way. You have to talk a certain way. You can't be too loud. You can't be too whatever. And if you're not, then you're the one that stands out in the family. You're the one that people don't want to be around because, like Maria, from nobody, but it also makes it difficult to have relationships with people that try to put you in that little box, because that's what it's supposed to be. And so that's the difficult piece of, are we domesticating ourselves or our children to behave certain ways? And the best example that I can give is, how do we treat a boy and a girl? For a little girl, You know, if you have a little girl infant, what do you do? Ay, qué bonita, qué preciosa, ay, baby, baby, baby. And with a little boy, what do you do? Whee! You know, and you throw them up in the air, and it's so cool. You know, or if a little girl falls down and she scrapes her knee, you know, you take her, you put her in your lap, and you're like, ay, pobrecita, you know, let me kiss and make it better. It's okay, blah, blah, blah. But if a boy falls down, you know, it's like, oh, get up, take it like a man, you know, and so it becomes that part of, you know, going back to what Nydia had said, it's looking at the mirror and seeing what is it that how do I want to live my life? You know, is it okay for me to say, well, I don't want to do this, and realizing that the consequence is, well, you don't do it, you're not going to be accepted. Can you live with that consequence? Because that's what it really comes down to. But if I don't act this way, then they're not going to like me. Well, do I really care that they don't like me? Is it such a big deal for me? Or do I believe in doing it my own way? And you know, because this is not right for me. So, I mean, this could be a major philosophical discussion, but the bottom line is that we are taught to behave a certain way, you know, and to put ourselves last and to have acceptance, even though it's not what we want, but it's what makes everybody around us comfortable. And when we don't, we step outside that norm, being ourselves, and then people don't really know how to relate to us. So then they come out with, ay, pobrecita, todavía estás sola. It's like, you know, and I have to say, you know, the way I look at it is, my God, you can make a life all by yourself and make it a good one. Isn't that fucking awesome? You know, whereas, you know, seeing people depend, you know, and stay in a relationship 20, 30, 40 years, wow, that's wonderful. But the relationship is crap. You know, so you got to make that decision on where do you want to sit, on which fence.
Right. You know, in this philosophy, there is something very important, and it's the present and forward. The past doesn't matter. How was raised 30 years ago, or 40 years ago, or 60 years ago, doesn't matter anymore. I mean, we have the power to change if that's what we want, if we don't like what we got.
Yep.
We have that power. Whatever they did to us whenever we were little, that's the past. And that I can change. I cannot change it. But what I can change is how I see it now. That I have the power to do. And I accept that power, and I embrace that power. And I feel happy about it. And I know those who have done it around me have improved their life tremendously. And I love seeing that. I love seeing these transformations. I love seeing people getting happier and healthier and stronger and more powerful. That's amazing. Every time I see that, I get so excited and so encouraged. I know it's possible. I know we don't have to live at the mercy of whatever happened in the past. I know that. I know that firsthand. I have seen it and I have experienced it. I know it's true. And if what we want is a relationship, we can have one. Healthy and wonderful and long lasting and supportive and all the stuff that we want. What do we need to change? What is it that we need to change? What is it that we need to polish? That's all we can do. Change ourselves. But the moment that we change, things around us change. Guaranteed. So that's all that matters. It is possible. By the way, we haven't heard anything from Jackie. Jackie, what do you think? We're about to close because it's almost 8:30. Please let us hear your voice.
Funny you say that, because I was just going to ask you a question about fear. That sometimes you don't believe that you can grow and change, and you don't realize the power within you to be able to change, to make yourself find that inner happiness. And so fear, I think, gets in the way a lot. I know that got in the way a lot for me. for my relationship for 35 years. Fear kept me there for many years. And you know, I can testify that, you know, feeling that power to change can be very encouraging and motivational, and it's scary because it is very profound, the power that you have within. And I found myself sometimes scared of my own power, my own strength. And sometimes I think that's what kind of like pulls me back when I move forward with my change and my transition in my life and my new life. That fear of, oh my God, I'm actually doing this. Like, I have the power and the strength to do this.
You do. And that's fantastic. I love it. Of course you have it. And fear is such a book. You know, their description of, by the way, a Buddha is a simple person who has tremendous courage, extraordinary wisdom, and profound compassion. Anyone is a Buddha. We are all potentially Buddhas. And so part of developing our life is leaving behind the fear. And we all work on that. I don't know if it's possible to completely get rid of it, but definitely can be improved. That I know.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, Maria Cardes, I have a bunch of PDF books that I can share with you. They're all free, you know. You just have to read online. I mean, read from the screen, which not so many people like to do. But if you don't have a problem reading from the screen, I have them in Spanish and in English. Your microphone is off.
I was going to email you so that maybe you could just give me a few books that I could start with.
Yeah,
I rather read, you know, have the book or download it or whatever. Because when you say screen, you mean like, you know, go to YouTube.
Read them on your computer.
Yeah, you read them from the screen, from the computer. So it's a PDF file. It reads like a regular document.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. But we'll email each other, and you know, we could talk about that.
Nydia, I had a quick question too. You know that I've taken philosophy, and a lot of what I've learned and, you know, part of my personal growth has been philosophy. But are there different types of followings or practices?
Yeah, there are. You know, Dalai Lama, he's a Zen Buddhist, a Tibetan Buddhist. It's a completely different branch of Buddhism than the one I practice. And there are many, and they have different ways of doing it. Some people meditate with their eyes closed and in silence. We do it like every night at 8:30 by chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. But the truth is, whether you practice with your eyes closed or open, meditation is essential. It's a very practical tool to help improve your life. And that has been scientifically proven. And before we go, we're running out of time, but before we go, I just want to share with you something quickly. There is a professor in Harvard that teaches his classes every week, every semester, with a simple assignment. He asks his students to keep their minds blank, without thoughts for 30 seconds. And after each class, ask if anyone was able to do that. And of course, no one was able to do that. And the next question the professor asked is, okay, you claim to own your own life and to be the owner of your, you know, and you cannot even control your mind for 30 seconds. And what happened is jails and prisons around the world are full of people who couldn't control an impulse in a specific moment make the wrong decision and end up behind bars. And of course, none of us are ever going to end up behind bars. At least I hope so. But what happened is we have done a lot of stuff we should have not done. We have said a bunch of stuff we should have not said, and so forth. So that is one of the practical applications of chanting or meditating. Because when you're meditating, you're chanting, your mind will go in 100 different directions. But because the brain behaves like a muscle, and that has been proven scientifically, if you flex your muscle 100 times in a certain way, the muscle will develop that way. So the brain, even though the brain is not a muscle. But what happens is your mind goes in 100 different directions when you are chanting. But you said, nope, I don't want to go to the supermarket now or feed the dog or buy the new shoes. I'm going to focus in repeating this mantra right now. And you have to do that 1,000,000 times. Because your mind will try to always, like, have you heard about the monkey mind? The mind will try to jump in every single branch. So you have to keep your mind where you want it to be. And that tiny exercise will transform tremendously and profoundly your life. As simple as it seems, as simple as just repeating a mantra. And it's so simple that people don't. Scientifically proven it works. Mantra meditation is a quite effective tool, and it has many, many benefits. But anyway, I gotta go because it's my
All right.
time to go
Thank
chanting.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everyone.
Thank you
Ciao,
so
everybody.